Welcome to Brewsers, a podcast about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. I am your host, Rody John, and today we speak to Jake the Grinder Heffernan. We talk about his MMA career, jiu-jitsu, and balancing a family. We also have a big announcement during this interview from Jake. It's a great conversation we have. We'll get there in a second. Also, Jake is sponsored by Bayou City Tattoos, Boars All Day, Guardian Roofing Company, Vinnie Vincent Real Estate, and Case Ray Construction. If they also want to come sponsor the Brewsers podcast, we are also more than welcome and open to all sponsors coming to the show who do want to sponsor this lovely podcast. So again, if you are a sponsor or you know a sponsor, please come talk to us and we can figure something out. Anyway, in the meantime, also, make sure to sign up for our newsletter. That is right. It comes out twice a week. You can not only figure out what is happening even more with our guests, a little more backstory on them. You could also find out what is happening and forthcoming with your favorite podcast, all about beer, coffee, booze, and bruisers. And you also get a little fun fact. So make sure to go sign up for our newsletter. In the meantime, here is Jake the Grinder Heffernan. I am here with Jake the Grinder Heffernan. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, man. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you as well. Yeah, so you're down in Houston. I'm up in the DFW area here in Texas. And it seems like weather-wise we just talked about has opposite effect. You guys are actually nice, clear skies, and we are actually getting rain today.
Yeah. You guys must be catching the storm we just got done with.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that storm. I would say it's needed, but we got rain over the weekend too. So.
Yeah. That's that Texas weather, though, man. It's a coin toss every time.
Yeah, the old saying, if you don't like the weather in Texas, just wait 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, what is your earliest memory of martial arts?
Oh man, earliest memory of martial arts or earliest memory of fighting? Because those can be two different answers. Okay, so martial arts.
Yeah.
Well, I had never done jiu-jitsu before. Never even really contemplated trying it. And a buddy of mine who was an amateur fighter at the time, his name was Michael Sparks. He just was like, hey man, I'm a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. I was at like, not a party, but like a family get together. One of my buddies had just gotten out of the Navy and, a bunch of dudes that are all, kind of crazy and wild and want to play around. And so we started rolling around in jiu-jitsu, rolling around in the front yard. And, he was just teaching me arm bars and triangles, and he was a pretty lengthy guy and he was also really strong. So he was beating me up. Also, the lack of experience is kind of playing into his favor. But yeah, that was when I was probably, I must have been 18, maybe 19 years old. And that was like my first taste of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like a real martial art. And it was awesome, man. We ended up, wrestling around in the front yard for probably like an hour while the family get together was going. And it was after that I was like, man, that was like addicting to be able to do all that stuff. I gotta do that again. And kind of just from there, started searching for a gym and stuff. But yeah, that was like my first introduction to the martial art that I am a black belt in now. So it was one of those, fun, kind of just like wasn't really looking for it at first. More so just kind of, it fell in my lap. With that small interest of fighting, like I liked watching UFC, but at this time the UFC fights were like once every few months, and so it was quite a long time ago.
Yeah, now literally every weekend. Although I did find it funny they did not do anything WrestleMania weekend. They decided to take that one weekend off. I found that to be quite interesting. But yeah, every weekend there is either free fights or pay-per-view. So yeah, it's a lot to keep up with sometimes.
Yeah, it's just been, it's awesome that we have the ability to have gone from like almost like waiting for a big boxing match to come to now it's just like, hey, what are you doing this weekend? It's like, I'm watching the fights.
Right. And if you miss them, you can probably just get them on the ESPN Plus app, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Like you got all these new streaming services. It's great.
Well, so that's your earliest memory of martial arts. What's your earliest memory of fighting?
Earliest memory of fighting, that's got to be in high school. Me and my buddies all, and again, this is before I even knew about jiu-jitsu. We started duking it out in the front yard with each other or in the backyards or wherever we could find, scheduling like unsanctioned fights with each other and beating each other up and getting in trouble for it. And, you know, and that's when I was young, maybe 15 or 16 years old. And, I got into like my first actual like plan to fight with somebody and like, you know, didn't train for it, like ran around my neighborhood a few times to get my cardio a little bit better. But that was like the gist of training for the fight. And, you know, and I've had other skirmishes in school where I, you know, got mad at somebody and we fought, but it was like, you know, 10 seconds of nobody landing a punch and then getting tackled by a couple of teachers. So, you know, but that day where I like agreed to fight somebody is like my most memorable thing in fighting, because really the dude that I went against was trained. He did jujitsu and he trained at an MMA gym, and I just was like a Joe Schmo in my backyard. But the cool thing was, even when you're doing that kind of stuff, everyone's got a puncher's chance. I ended up cracking the guy with a Mack truck right hand and then grabbing a hold of him and squeezing him as hard as I could, and then he freaked out and tapped because he was hurt. And I was like, I don't know what I just did, but I won. And that's like my most memorable fight memory for sure, is that first little agree to fight somebody situation.
Right. So you kind of had a backyard fight kind of. Well, there used to be backyard wrestling done, and obviously there's backyard MMA as well. I mean, look at what.
Yeah, we used to call them backyard brawls is what we used to call them.
That's a good name too. You probably could have made some money off that, and I still think that could be a very profitable if promoted right. I think that could still work.
Yeah, you know, and honestly, there's just, you know, you got those, you know, that Dada 5000. He did kind of like something kind of like that, and so there's a little bit of something for everybody when it comes to fighting, and you can pretty much do it anywhere. I'm sure some guys, you know, they got those new Ray-Ban Story sunglasses or regular Ray-Ban glasses that have the cameras in it. You can just go into a bar and press record and wait for something to happen. So, I mean, there's so many options in just getting some stuff started in different areas without even having to pull your phone out now. So, it's crazy.
Content creation is beautiful.
Yes.
Now, you fight at featherweight, but what weight do you actually walk around at?
So I walk around at 165, usually, depending on, you know, how life is going and how the diet is going. I hired a nutritionist the last couple of, you know, fights, pretty much ever since I got over my big injury from 2020 when I got shot. I've just been kind of keeping it on that diet plan so that I can, you know, maintain. But honestly, the last weight cut was rough and ended up busting weight. And, you know, it's one of those things. And it was only, you know, busted weight by like a pound or a pound and a half or something. But, it does definitely get harder the older you get, for sure. So it's just one of those things where you want to walk around at 20 pounds out, and then you want to diet down to like 15 to 10 pounds out while you're in camp. And then hopefully you're touching like the 10-pound mark come fight week, and then the cut is easy. But anything beyond that gets a little rough.
Yeah, it's the old Derek Jeter quote, it's easier to stay in shape than get back into shape.
Yes. Oh God. And what a crime it is that the body reacts to sugars and different things like that. It's just, I wish we got skinnier when we were eating sugars.
If it was only that easy, I think we'd all be much happier.
Yeah. It reminds me of Bruce Almighty when the lady prays to God. Well, Bruce. And then she's like, I'm on the Krispy Kreme diet. I've lost 20 pounds. And I'm like, oh, God, that's the diet I need to get on.
Right?
Yeah, so I normally allow myself to balloon up a little bit and enjoy the holidays toward the end of the year, and then January I'll always do a dry January. I'll do some kind of weight loss thing, and like the later it gets and like the bigger I get in December, I just feel so uncomfortable. Nothing fits right. Like sitting and like even bending over to tie your shoes is not like the most enjoyable thing at all. And it just feels awful. And I can't imagine like on y'all's end where you have to get at a certain point. Like if I don't get down to the weight I want to by the end of January, I don't feel terrible, but it's also I'm not getting paid to do it. You guys are actually getting paid and there's a fight on top of that. So I imagine like genuinely controlling your diet is far harder for you guys than it is obviously for regular people.
Yeah, well, and then the other thing is you got to think, like, if you're an active fighter, and this is something that's been kind of weighing on me for pretty much since I had my last fight. If you're actively competing in MMA and you're trying to make the run to the UFC or one of the big shows like Bellator or one of those other big ones, you're pretty much always in camp mode. Even when you're off, you finish a fight, you feel good, you're like, you win, you lose, whatever the scenario is, and then you immediately are like, what's the next fight? Which means you have to immediately watch what you're eating. You only get like a week of regular eating. Drinking is almost non-existent. I mean, at least for the most serious guys. I know John Jones likes to go out there and show everybody he can party nonstop and fight still, but for the bulk of us, it's like I want to treat my body like a temple so that I can compete. And it gets difficult because, I mean, I've been fighting for like 12 years. I feel like I've been in camp the entire time. And even when I've been injured, I get injured and the whole process of healing from the injury is so that I can fight again. So the diet has to be on point. You can't just really relax. Like even again, when I was injured for a whole year, COVID happened at the same time. And that entire time I was trying to squeeze training sessions in, making sure my diet was on point. And, we sat in everybody sat in their houses for so long. It was like, I was like, everyone's going to get fat. That's what's going to happen. Every fighter in Houston is going to come back and be like, I got to go to the next weight class. So, it takes a lot of dedication and it can definitely weigh down after a while. I think that's why every once in a while you run into people that, they do bust weight or they have weight cutting complications because, you could do everything right, but just your body can react badly, or you can do it, everything. Some guys do everything wrong and still are easily able to make weight. So it's kind of, it's a win-lose when in that scenario with wanting to compete constantly, because you get the glory of competing, but then the family, let's go, your wife's like, let's go to the bar, and you're like, I can't. And then your kids are like, let's go to a Chuck E. Cheese, and you're like, I'll take you, but I can't enjoy the food with you. And definitely a tough process.
Yeah, I didn't think about those little aspects. Like I know I think about the process of y'all having to leave your family to go fight, all the events you guys probably missed because of the fact that either you're in training or you are fighting. I didn't think about the little day-to-day things of, hey, I want to go to Chuck E. Cheese. Like, okay, cool, you can do that, but I can't eat anything. Or like maybe even a date night with your wife. It's like, okay, I can go, but I'm not drinking. You can drink. I'm not going to drink. So like I forgot and just didn't think, I guess, about the tiny sacrifices of stuff like that.
Yeah, it's rough. It is rough. I mean, I myself have paid for it on a family end because of being in constant competition. I'm actually a single dad now from my previous, relationship with my wife. I have 2 children, and, we ended up separating after so many fight camps. So it's just, again, it's one of those things where the family definitely feels it, because this is like the most selfish sport, because you have to be. And that's an understanding thing. Like you try to make sure that you cover your bases with family.